Welcome everybody. Starting to come in now. We'll give a couple
Brilliant.
minutes for everybody to
Yeah.
join. If I might go ahead, Ray, and I'll introduce myself first. I'm Coach Pav. I'm into 3 full years into my fourth year with Humango now, and a coach of nearly 15 years, from everyday middle-aged men and women in Lycra all the way through to world champions and Olympians. But great to be here talking about goal setting at this very apt time of year with you all. Just before I hand over to you, Ray, I'm going to encourage everybody to post your questions into the Q&A part of Zoom, and we will get to those either all today in today's workshop if we have time, or we will put on another supplementary webinar to go through these again. So I'm going to hand over to you, Ray. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thanks, Pav. Well, happy 2025 to everybody. Isn't it interesting how the turning of the new year suggests a new page and an opportunity to realign goals regardless of where you live on the globe. I find that a really fascinating study, and I'm not sure that everybody on this call is into New Year's resolutions, but I think certainly a great opportunity to gather your thoughts and align some of your focus for the next 12 months coming up. So yeah, privileged to have you all here today to consider that. I'm going to facilitate a little bit more of a workshop here today. I'm Coach Rae. I'm the Master Triathlon Coach at Humango. I not as highly acclaimed as Pav. Haven't coached any Olympians, but been coaching for about 15 years full time and been involved in the sport of triathlon since I was 16. And in fact, was just privileged enough to race in the World Championships in Taupau in New Zealand. So just coming back off at the end of a very long season myself, and super excited to share our vision for the year coming up. So yeah, welcome everybody. I really reiterate what Pav just requested, is that, any questions at all that you've got, pop them in the Q&A, and we'll endeavour to either answer those along the way or focus on those at the very end of the workshop. So a little bit of housekeeping. If you are able, if you could, go grab a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. We're actually going to do a workshop today. We're going to encourage you to go through a set process to help you lay out your year up and coming. So what that will involve is just a few steps of you brainstorming and popping some things down on paper. If pen and paper is not your MO, mobile phone is fine too. But actually the neurological connection that you make when you write something down on a piece of paper actually works on a pathway that puts you in a position where you're much more likely to achieve that goal when you go through that. So step one is to get that pen and paper ready. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds for that. Pav, we were talking just earlier about 2025 and what's coming up, thinking about what we'll introduce here in a moment, process goals versus outcome goals. Was wondering what one of your big outcome goals might be for 2025.
Yeah, good question. We were just talking about this, and having recently got back into Zwift after some time off, given our upcoming connection with Zwift, I'm kind of jealous that everybody apart from myself has the fire socks. So level 50 apparently. I'm a bit of a way off, but we'll see. How about you, Ray?
I love that goal because it's not got anything to do with the race, and I've got to say mine has got nothing to do with the race either, because I've had a pretty injury prone 2024 and really want to get on top of all of that. So it's not a goal race for me. It's putting myself in a position pre-committing to any race where I'm actually strong and not limited by any injuries. So that's my goal. Lots of steps towards that to achieving that. So yeah, thank you. All right, well, let's get started. like I said, this workshop is here for you to help you realise your 2025 goals and maybe even beyond, because what you might find today is that when we do the first step and you ask yourself the question, what gets you really excited about participating and racing in, events, is that it might create a list that's so long that you can't squeeze it all into 2025. And so what you might find is there's even some things left over for 2026 and beyond, which kind of is really exciting, because I think it's a really, really long runway, and reaffirms the steps that you need to take to get to something that maybe is even bigger than what you can imagine right now. That's why this process is really important. So the first question I would like us all to ask ourselves is literally, what races and events get you excited? And what I mean by excited, I mean, what imparts that feeling or sensation of wonder or fascination around what is possible for you in participating in that event. So this might be one or two events, it could be, a series of events, but whatever it is for you, this is deeply personal. No one can tell you what gets you, excited about racing. It is very deeply personal. So what I'd like you to do is just make a list of what races and events you're super interested in, what imparts that feeling of wonder about participating in those races or events. I want you to write them all down, and don't hold back from putting all of them down. So get rid of that filter that we can so often, apply when we're looking at the big picture. It might be the filter that says, oh no, I could never do that, or that's too hard, or, never, not me, like I don't deserve that. Like, that stuff, that self-talk that can come into play when we're starting to set those big goals and set our objectives high. Take the filter off and write them all down. I'll give you 1 minute. I'll give you 1 minute to do that. They don't have to be in any particular order either. Just anything that you would like to achieve. Get them all down on paper.
I have an early question on that, Rae, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Yeah,
why should they be? Why should there be an emotional attachment?
Because it's personal then.
Yeah, I agree.
It internalizes it. Yep.
Yeah, and I think that without that excitement or that emotional attachment to your goal, as soon as those questions of why am I doing this horrible training, those intrusive thoughts get very loud. So yeah, very good.
That's right. Yeah, we were actually talking about that, weren't we, last year? Is like, what happens when the training gets hard, when you don't feel like getting out of bed in the morning, it's cold out, or you haven't slept well, or you're feeling that accumulated fatigue from the training block and just things don't feel great. What's going to be that thing that gets you starting, gets you out, gets you into that training session and keeps you on your path? And if it's not deeply personal and emotional, chances are it's going to be easy to dismiss. So setting yourself up for success where it is really deeply personal is really critical to that piece. Great question.
Keep them coming, people, as well. Keep using that Q&A and pop them in there, or any personal anecdotal stories that you've got that might be relevant. Feel free to chuck those in, or even what your goals are for this year. But thank you.
All right, so yep, they're all down there. Hopefully now you can always come back to this afterwards, but the point is that you get the process and the steps in place that you can come back and revisit later on. If you feel like you've only got a little way through that, that's fine. So in no particular order, you've got everything down on the page. Now what I'd like you to do, again, it's a workshop, so I'm going to get you thinking today. Really want to get you connected to these 2025 goals. As it pertains to all of those events that you've just listed, what I'd also like you to do is make a list of all the things that you have control over that will help you achieve your goals. So everything that you can influence, everything that you have control over to help you achieve those goals. And this leads to the process goals, which actually gets a little bit more detailed as we go, but we're working high level to, very, very detailed. List all the things that you have to control over that will help you achieve those goals. I'll give you a minute.
Could we get a couple of examples, please, Rae? Maybe from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So say, for example, I'm going to use this is great because I can actually start, actively thinking about my goal. I want to be injury free. That's my focus. So what that's going to take is getting into the gym, probably getting a strength and conditioning coach, getting a functional movement screen, and committing to 2 times a week in the gym, which for me is probably going to involve me getting a membership at a gym. So that's the stuff that I have control over when it comes to me getting stronger and injury free. Something else might be, for example, finding a mentor or a coach that I can be accountable to, or a PT even that has a little bit more knowledge than me, that keeps me on track, and I can engage that person. Again, that's something that I have control over. And this is probably going to be one of those lists that you'll come back to, because the more that we get into this, the more you'll realize how much you actually can influence when it comes to achieving your goals. All right, just a few more seconds there. All right, first activity, list your events and races. Second activity, list all the things that you have control over that will help you achieve those goals. This leads us to detailed process goals. So breaking those things down that you have control over and looking at the absolute specifics. Process goals are the controllable actions that help you achieve your larger objectives. So things that you can actively do, your controllable actions that you can do and that you can apply on a daily basis, even an hour-to-hour basis, that helps you achieve that larger objective. So now we can look at the absolute examples of really defining what that activity looks like. So I have a bunch of examples here. So I'm just going to read them through, and this will be something that you'll come back to just to define those actionable items that you can influence. All around building good habits. I guess that's a really great way to think about this, is that what habits am I going to employ that are going to help me achieve my goal? So one of the big things for me is if I know I have to get up early the next morning for a training session and I haven't got all my gear already prepared, especially for a swim, right? I've got to get all the swim gear and everything, or if it's an open water swim, it's the wetsuit, the whole works. If I haven't got that sort of set up the night before, I can find myself getting, kind of even having that be something that stops me from getting out the door in the morning, because it's an extra thing that I have to do when I'm tired and I'm not really in the mood. So just something simple as prepping for the training the night before, setting up your bike trainer and making sure that, all your tech is ready to go for the early morning Zwift ride the next day. Setting up a dedicated training space. So for some of us, we might not have, the privilege or the option to have a permanent training space, but there might be ways that we can be a little bit creative with dedicating some space in our living quarters to our training, whether that be indoor, bike riding or yoga or stretching, or our at-home gym work, functional gym work, that kind of stuff. Getting feedback from a coach or mentor, I mentioned that before. If you're looking at specializing in a particular area of your training, maybe finding a mentor that can help you in that space would be a really great process goal to have. Purchasing a membership at the gym, I mentioned that one. We could track the monthly volume or intensity goals. So having a mechanism to track that. Say, for example, in Humango, we have our weekly and our monthly tracking, and we can actually set goals around that. We can buy a new wearable or a new tracking system. That could be something that really engages us and enables us to focus on one piece of our health or our well-being, say, for example. We could commit to scheduling a certain number of training type sessions within a week and actually committing them to your calendar. So making them something that shows up on your calendar as opposed to something that sits in the app. making that connection between how you act on a day-to-day basis and what the app's actually prescribing you. Scheduling or committing to reading about sports performance, say for 10 minutes a week. You know, it might only be 10 minutes a week, but every week I do that. 40 minutes a month, you know, that adds up over time. So I'm educating myself. It could be something like completing a mindfulness course. I want to be more mindful about how I'm applying myself and how I'm showing up in life. So there's lots of different things that we can control that help us achieve those outcome goals. And these are called our process goals. So this will be something you come back to. Hopefully those examples, you know, help you kind of be a little bit more creative and be more focused in your thinking around those mechanisms that you can employ to design, you know, and create good habits.
I love that. I think that's fantastic, Rae. Great advice. The bit that's screaming out to me is building habits and really getting that routine sorted for me when I'm, you know, going back when I had a brief career in ultra endurance cycling. I think that one of the things that drove my ability to compete was my ability to maintain a routine in training as well. And I think that starts, this is, you know, almost day one in terms of that habit forming and building, right? So yeah, it's screaming back to me that. Got a great question here. How many process goals is too many or not enough?
Oh, I like this question. So, and I'm not going to park that question because it is relevant. What you're going to find is towards the end of this workshop, you're going to be prioritizing your outcome goals or those races and events that you listed first. And what you'll find is that kind of will be your first filter of eliminating some of these process goals. So just by default, if you decide, you know, maybe initially you had, you know, 6 goals on your outcome goals list, but you decide on 3 because they make sense, and that will make more sense as we go through here. What that will do is automatically eliminate some of these process goals. But I would say probably 2 or 3 per goal is enough. And the reason I say that is in all the years of my coaching and my own sports performance myself, is that I find it really difficult to change more than a couple of things at a time. And even that can be quite a stretch. So that filter will be, is this something completely new that I've never done before? Because maybe in that case, 1 is actually enough. But if this is something that I've been sort of working towards for a while, maybe 2 or 3 is realistic. Maybe I have the bandwidth for that. So again, that's going to be deeply personal to sort of how you have structured your life and what these outcome goals are. So not an absolute answer, but hopefully by the end of that of this workshop, you'll just be that little bit clearer on what's going to be most important and what's going to connect that process goal to the outcome goal, you know, more clearly. Does that help? Like, I don't want to be. It's really difficult to say because we're all so individual and we come from different places. Hopefully that helps.
You can add another question if there's needs expanding on, but yeah, thank you for that, Rae.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so now we're going to kind of go back to that first list, the events, the races, you know, the outcome goals. What I'd like you to do now is add a measurable metric to what's going to determine how you're going to achieve that goal. So what we want to do is attach a measurable to those races and events. So it could be a time goal, for example. You know, I want to complete a 100K cycling event in a certain amount of time. I want to complete a 5K time trial in a certain amount of time. This is going to come back to your goal set. It's going to come back to your races and your events. But add something that you can measure it with. Volume per week. Like, say, for example, it's just being consistent. What determines whether you're being consistent? Is it a certain number of hours per week of training or hours per month that you're going to track and measure that's going to determine your success in that? Could it be a specific threshold pace or power that you're looking to to achieve. In reflection, in the achievement of that goal, I should say, make sure that it still is connected to that initial goal or the race that you've listed. Maybe it's something a little bit more broad, but still measurable, like the number of races per year that you would like to achieve, or just qualify for a certain race. Maybe it's a big national or interstate competition or international competition. You just want to put yourself in a position where you can qualify for that. You want to be able to race a race within a certain time of a cutoff to be able to qualify for a set race. So anything that you can use to measure your success in that goal or race. I'll give you a minute.
No questions at this point, Rae, but I'm wondering if you had a personal example that you wanted to share of that.
Yeah, I think this one's going to be a tough one for me, as I'm working at being injury free, measuring that by literally being able to go out and train without any injury at all, so no pain, no aggravation, that kind of thing. So that for me is a really measurable thing. Like I either feel pain or I don't, or I feel discomfort or I don't, or I'm limited or I'm not. But I tend to default more to time goals for my racing. I really like the 70.3 triathlon distance, or the half iron distance race. And so over time, as I'm getting older, my goal has been to stay within a certain tolerance of my best time from year to year, knowing that I'm getting slower and there's not everything, I can't do everything to slow that down, but that's just where I'm at in my life. So I actually am very motivated by the idea or the concept of maintaining fitness as I age. So I use a time goal for my 70.3 racing as sort of my litmus test, and something that actually really excites me. Yeah. I think it's tied into the idea that, I'm defying the norms, maybe.
Love it. We've got a quick question, if you don't mind, before we move to the next section. How do you know if your outcome goal is realistic?
Oh, that's a good question. That's like, it depends, isn't it? If you're newer to racing and training and you don't have history of your performance, or don't really have a deep knowledge of what multiples of seasons of training and racing in different events, then that's going to be a really difficult thing. So I would step more away from the absolute measurables like TPO, TPA, finish time for a race, and look more at pacing for shorter intervals. Say, for example, it might not be a 10K time trial, it could be best time for a mile, and really break those bigger goals down so that it's not that you can't still link that to the big goal, but that goal is actually made up of smaller goals. So I think it depends on the history of your racing and your training and what you know about your physical potential, really. Pav, have you got something to add to that? Because I think that's a real coachy question that really depends on the individual, I think.
Yeah, the first thing I thought when I read the question was, it's previous data. If you don't really have anything to look over, then it's probably best to try to be, approach these early events and goals with as open mind as possible to really kind of just accept that you might completely blow your expectations out the water, or you might not. But following this process and I know you come to this at the end, so I'm not gonna say this, but obviously pivoting when need to is a crucial kind of in that journey.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So for all sorts of reasons, our journey might be derailed along the way, and that could be because we have set a goal that's just unrealistic. Something comes into play that limits our ability to employ those, the process goals. So, for example, could be financial, could be, resources, just generally speaking. Yes, so we are constantly readjusting. It's like that business plan that we write at the beginning of the year. It never actually gets implemented, but it gives us that starting point, and having that flexible mindset that ensures that when something does change in our business plan and our season plan, that we have those skills to be able to adjust and move and continue to move forward. Yeah, good point. Okay, so this kind of applies to this question, although I would say even in thinking about how big the goal is and how long you've got to achieve it, breaking your big goals down into stepping stones is really important. So it's the classic examples, and there's no right or wrong here. I think it's pretty typical. If we're thinking about going long in endurance sports, we think about doing shorter races first. Longer is not necessarily better. It's just what some people like to do. So I'm not saying this is the right process for everybody, but say, for example, I've got a half marathon on my schedule in 6 months' time, and I haven't run a half marathon for a couple of years because of whatever reason. A way of breaking that goal down into stepping stones is to add a 5 kilometre and a 10 kilometre race in that next 6 months, or a time trial. Even doesn't have to be a race, a test event, a test training session that will kind of lay those seeds for you to help prepare for that half marathon. And any distance of any endurance race can be kind of broken down in the same way. So if there's that sort of, how I said at the beginning, pop everything down, even if it seems really lofty, and that you might end up with something that, is assigned to 2026 and beyond. This is how you would look at that. And maybe it is an ultra event that it just sounds like absolutely mad to you right now. The way of looking at that could be that, well, I want to do an ultra event in 2026, so I have to start with a 10K in February, and we build those stepping stones out. And it sounds so logical, but the action of doing this and then applying that to your season plan is really critical. So that might be just at this point for you, looking at some of those really, really big goals and just adding the note, yep, questions, stepping stones. How are you going to break down that goal so that it's more achievable and gives you some time stamps along the way that you can use to determine your success. So maybe you just want to just take a few seconds now to add some, stepping stone notes. And what you can do is, as you're achieving those stepping stones, on reflection of the results, you can then use that information to help inform your next steps. So this is where a training program becomes really fluid, right? I've done my 5K and wow, I did better than I thought I would. That information is going to help inform what I do next. It's going to help inform the specifics of my training in the next training block as I train for my 10K, right? So you start to see how organic this can be and how much of an active process it is once we've sort of set that overarching schedule to continue to come back and reevaluate what it is that we're looking to achieve along the way. All right, so we've got our stepping stones. One of the biggest questions we get from users is, how do I know that my season plan is right for me? So this is where we're arriving at right now. So what's next, and how do I create my season plan? What I want you to do now, once again, very active, go back to your list of goals and your races and events, and put them in order of importance or preference to you. And I want to add a little caveat here. Don't prioritize those goals based on what you think other people should do or what other people think you should do. Place the priority on the things that you think are most important, the things that you want to focus on. I think it can be easy to have sort of peer pressure and the impression of what other people are doing influence how you prioritize your goals. Just make this really personal, prioritize your goals. So maybe just to start, a few seconds to prioritize your top 3 goals. Again, it's not final. You can always come back to review this. That's all right. It can change. It might be for some people 1, 2, 3 is a really, quick task. Others might be, sweating bullets over, I don't know which one. But like I said, you can always come back and revisit this step.
What would be your best advice for somebody who is really struggling to prioritize them? Difficult question, that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the first thing, because there's so much to this. Yes, it's a step. Then I do this. Then what comes next? Process. I think sometimes stepping away, giving it a day, and just kind of letting it settle a little bit. Even just getting it out on paper. Like I said, using the good old pen and paper, getting it out of your head onto paper, can be a little overwhelming. So even just getting through that step where you've sort of got your basis down on the page and stepping away and kind of seeking a little bit of clarification just as you're sort of moving around your day to day and coming back to it the next day can actually encourage, just you see it in a different way.
I think that's a great answer. Go do a workout, come back, cleared
Go
your
do
head.
a workout.
Yeah, go do a workout.
Isn't that the solution for everything? Go do a workout.
come back, and you might have a bit more clarity. But I'm going to just sort of segue into is this a good opportunity for those who can afford it to be working with a coach? Obviously, it's a luxury that most of us can't. But what would be your opinion on the role of other people? And you touched on this a little bit in terms of prioritizing goals.
Yeah, in fact, it's a service that a lot of coaches will offer is just season planning. A 1 or 2 hour consult that where the coach's role is to help facilitate this process. And the reason that can be so powerful is that the coach has the physiological, the knowledge, the science, and yet they have the distance from the athlete, so they can kind of look at it a little bit more subjectively. Because as this is such a personal thing, right? What motivates us to do this hard stuff is very personal. So having somebody that's just one step removed from it, but has that deep level of knowledge and understanding of a season plan, periodization, and then how those different goals fit together can be really useful. So it might not be engaging in a coach athlete relationship ongoing, but a couple of $100 up front to have that initial consult and a follow-up can be really valuable to set up your whole season. So just, if that's something that you feel you could get a lot of value from, I'd suggest looking for a coach that can do that. Okay, so prioritizing the goals. Now we want to look at the synergy. So now we're looking at the spacing. Now we're getting to the logistics of, okay, where is what race going in my season? So we're going to look at the synergies between each goal. What supports what performance specific? And what this is going to allow you to do is kind of create a more unified focus for the season. What we often find is where athletes struggle is they're not conflicting, right? Because endurance sports is endurance sports and we're all in it for the same reason. As in your own reason, but we're all in it to achieve a certain outcome. But what can happen is athletes can add goals that where the training doesn't necessarily support the next goal coming up. And so what we want to do is sort of add a filter to those to that list, which is encouraging you to look at the synergies between those goals. So where are there commonalities in that list of events? And this might also be something that then sort of gets you to a point where you'll look at one going, I really want to do that, but it would be disruptive. It would really throw the progression off if I was to add that in 2025. Maybe that's another one for 2026, and I can look for other like goals for 2026 and start simplifying my focus for the year. That way, my training is going to be much more productive and I'm going to see much more progression if that is in fact your goal. It's not always about more and faster, right? I understand that. But maybe that's just a really good thing to do right now that's going to eliminate some of those goals that aren't going to be mutually supportive. So that's definitely, you know, I'd say that's going to take a little longer for you to do, but, you know, again, just make a note, look for synergy between the goals and what supports what as far as your performance is concerned. And where that becomes even more important is when we're looking at periodization in a season, how many races and events we have on our program, and how much time we need to taper for the event and how much time we need to recover for the event. The longer the event, the longer the taper and the longer the recovery. So if we're starting to cram too many events in too close of a time frame, clearly we're not giving ourselves time for training blocks between the taper and the recovery for our events. So next to each event, and you might not know the answer to this, that's okay, but you could just put more or less, or, you know, question mark. Just again, it's the idea that we're starting to think about the timing of these events over the season. Now, the great thing is Hugo does this for you. And if you end up putting races on your season plan that are too close together, you'll literally see that show up in your season. It will be a situation where your fitness never changes because you're literally going from recovery to taper to race to taper to race to recovery. And there's no opportunity for a proper training block where your fitness can improve. So you'll actually see that come to life once you select the plan button, create my plan. The season will be laid out, and you'll be able to see that literally in pictures if you've got that way off. So that's a nice litmus test. If you're not really sure, you can always just go straight to the app and have Hugo test that out for you. And then, of course, once you've kind of done that filtering, you're going to add those events to your season, like I just said, and get Hugo to go to work and create your season for you. Once you've got those, now you've gone through the step of eliminating those goals that you're not going to focus on this year, knowing that, hey, it might change. It's all right to add one. It's all right to take one off. Things are going to change. But now you have an idea of what's going to get you there, as in what process, what habits am I going to employ to get me to my goal, how I'm going to break that down into stepping stones, and then how am I going to review that? How am I going to measure it once I've arrived? And then now we get to that really exciting point where we're adding some key metrics. I want you to get really active in describing what it's going to feel like, what it's going to look like, what it's going to smell like when you achieve those goals. And, you know, this can be, I know Pav's a great one for this, something like creating a vision board. It can be using colours, words. Words are really powerful when it comes to describing how your outcome goal will look and feel when you achieve it. It could be photos of you achieving goals in the past that got you really excited, that you felt really proud about. And one last piece that to this, which is quite a nuanced piece, you can ask people to join you on this journey. But what I encourage you not to do, and I don't like to talk in the negative very often, but don't then announce to the world that you're going to do this. And the reason for that is psychologically, it's been shown that once you announce it to the world, in your mind, you've already achieved it. And what it does is it dilutes all the excitement and all of this work that you've just done around creating a successful environment for you to actually achieve that goal. So create your vision board, do all the things that you need to do to generate emotion around the achievement of that goal. Ask people to join you who are serious about doing the training or joining in on one piece of it. You know, that might be one of your process things. It might be, hey, I'm going to ask my buddy to join me on a Tuesday morning for a regular run. But don't announce it to the world, because that could be one thing that actually ends up tripping you up. Announce it to the world once you've achieved it. All right, any questions there?
No questions on that. We've got a couple of questions at the end, which we'll come back to. They're a little bit not necessarily specific to where we're at, so we can come back. I love that. That's I think it's great, great list so far, Rae. So thank you so much for putting this together for everybody. Just a reminder, people just want to use the Q&A. I think we said we were going to run for 45 minutes, Rae. So we're coming up to time, and we'll answer a few questions afterwards. So yeah, get those in.
Okay, so let's wrap up then. What you've done today, hopefully you've all done today, is you've listed all the events that get you excited. And now you have smaller actions or habit-forming process goals that you're going to do to help you achieve those goals. And now you have a clear way of gauging your success, clear metrics or measures to gauge your success in achievement of those goals. But the most important thing at this point, and I think this is where the idea of a New Year's resolution can fall flat on its face real quick, is that now you've got to go do it. Now you just got to go get out there and put action behind your plan. And that's where defaulting back to those, even if it's just for the first week, work out what those process goals are that are going, the systems, the structures, the habits that you're going to set in place, and start doing that. And if it feels all overwhelming, just do that 1 week at a time. Because I understand sometimes this is scary. You've just set yourself a huge challenge. And while cognitively it feels really doable because it makes sense on paper, 1 week at a time is a really great way of breaking that down. I guess you would call that a stepping stone goal, just 1 week at a time, right? Now, Pav mentioned something before about, what happens if something goes wrong. And it does. We know that nearly every day something's going to change, right? That determines how successfully you finish that session, whether you'd got to it or not. All the things when life gets lifey. To go through the process again. That's what it takes. If things have changed in that plan, what it means is reevaluating what's most important to you, what gets you excited, what process goals are you going to set in place, what do you need to review as far as that process goal is concerned, what stepping stones do I need to employ there, do I have to make an adjustment to my season plan, does my vision board now look different? And that's an ongoing process that we can apply anytime during the year. So I hope that helps you look at 2025 in a new way and in a really excited way to help you achieve your goals.
Thank you, Rae. I'm just going to come back to that last point, because one of our questions we just got in was, how often should I revisit this and potentially revise my goals? So let's just say that actually everything's going to plan and you've not been derailed. If that's maybe not very likely, but maybe there's nothing major that's derailed the plan. How often should you do this exercise?
I think that's a personal thing. I'd suggest once a month. Go back and see, even if your motivation has changed, something else might have come in that says, you know what, now I want to do this race. It's not that one anymore. It's this one because I didn't know about this before. You can change your mind. It's okay. But yeah, I would say, and I say monthly because generally my training blocks are 3 weeks on, 1 week recovery, load recovery. And if you go back and evaluate sort of how you progress through that phase of training and how well you recovered, it just sort of it feels like a good time to review your plan, even if nothing does change. It's a way to reinvigorate that excitement.
Perfect. So I've got one that is kind of related to goals. I just love the question, so we're going to go through it anyway. It's as I think about my goals for this upcoming season, I think that I need to be strategic about how I get my hours on the bike in to be competitive with the women who I want to compete with in races. And so I need ideas about how to use doubles to get in the hours on the bike. How does one structure a week to support 15 to 20 hours of cycling by using doubles whereas there is one a long day on the weekends?
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't have an absolute answer for that right now, but we kind of do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So our new Humango 2.0, which will be launched in March this year, I can say this year now, will include double session windows. So Hugo will actually be able to schedule double days for you, given a single sport or multi-sport program. It won't matter. That won't be predetermined by the goal that you choose. But for now, certainly, if you're in generally, and Pav is the expert here, I'm not the cycling coach, but in general, if you were to, set your maximum hours, set your fatigue tolerance to high, do all the things that you can to optimize how much training Hugo prescribes you, you can then go through and manually add something that's contrasting in the training focus. So say, for example, Hugo's added a threshold focus session on a Wednesday morning. You could add, 60 minutes of zone 2 in the afternoon manually, and that would be totally fine. But yeah, I agree with you. If you're looking at doing the same thing but expecting a different result, you're going to go crazy. So yes, I think that's a really wise and informed way of looking at your training going into the future. If you want to do better, you need to change something.
Yeah, perfect. Well done, Rae. Okay, Michael sent in something, submitted actually this as a question to our support team, I think. And I know I can definitely answer this one if not, but he says, first off, I recently used Humango for a 70.3 Ironman and had great success. So thank you for sharing that, Michael. But the question is about picking the right goal for multi-stage desert race in terms of within like Humango seasons.
Oh, I did see your ticket come through. Yes, Michael. We don't answer those, but we're privileged enough to see them. So we did see that. Soon you're going to be able to, part of Humango 2.0 is a time-based goal. So you'll be able to input how long you think that event will take. The multi-day is a little tricky because you're never going to do anything like that in training. So it's not going to look literally like a multi-day event training bout, but it will be a situation where you'll be able to enter how long each of your days is going to be, and Hugo will be able to create a customized plan for you. We haven't got that now. Again, I can answer that, but I can't offer that to you. So yeah, a shortcut to the fresh desk getting back to you and letting you know that will be the case. Did I miss something there, Pav?
Spot on with that, Rae. Yeah, I think we'll be for right now, yeah, the multi-day touring is the best one, but we'll have something that really personalizes that in the next big release. Sabine has sent a question, program specific to aquabike events, swim bike, Rae, do you know? Not sure.
What about it?
Do we have goals within Humango?
No, only duathlon.
Yeah.
We don't have the aquabike yet. Yeah.
Do you know if that's in the latest update, the next update? I'm not even
Good
sure
question.
myself.
No, I can't. No, I can't categorically say. You could do triathlon and just remove the sport.
Yeah, that's a great shout, Rae. Actually, in fact, yeah, doing
because Hugo will still work to the training load, the fitness that would be required for the distance.
Yeah, so that would be the best way while we add those in. Thank you, Sabine. Last question for the day, Rae. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but if I can't afford, because we mentioned coaching earlier, if I can't afford a coach, is it a good idea to follow a training plan from elsewhere? That's a easy question for you to answer, Rae.
From elsewhere, from not a coach?
From not a coach, yeah. Is it how good? I guess let's qualify this as how good can an app like Humango be in comparison to a human coach? And there's some conflicts there, isn't it, with us both being coaches and.
Well, yeah, but I think this is the conversation around the power of AI and certainly Humango with the 14 different settings that you can implement to determine the training plan that's individual for you. We're not a static plan, and we would never deliver a static plan to any of our users. That's not what Humango does. So the second best to having a coach that can have that human conversation and reflect and educate, really deeply personally, the next best option in the marketplace is Humango right now, because of all of the constraints, the personal feedback, the connecting the tracker and the wearable devices. So the hardcore data, the subjective feedback that we get, the health and wellbeing focus, the feedback that you get from Hugo. So Hugo is not a passive coach. Hugo can be quite active in your training journey. So there's a lot of aspects there that are human-like, clearly not human, and we don't even pretend that replaces the human interaction. That's really critical for us, but it would be the second best option out there.
Perfect. Thank you, Rae. It's the reason why more and more people, coaches rather, are joining us at Humango every day.
Super.
So I think that's all our questions, Rae. So I think we'll wrap up. I'd like to thank you, obviously, Rae, for putting this together.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a 30% off. As I've been so focused on the content and coaching people through setting up their successful 2025s. Pav, are you going to pop the 30% off discount code or link into the chat?
Done, just as you were saying it. Yeah.
Okay.
Great minds.
All right. Yeah. So I guess if you want that second best option to a human coach, you can sign up with Humango and take advantage of that discount today. Yeah. Super.
Excellent. Thank you, Rae. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We'll wish you an absolutely smashing and successful 2025.
Yeah. Spot on. Cheers to 2025, everyone. Thanks for joining us.